Okay, everyone. So we just went through a lot of type of comparators for strings using classes, and what we're going to look at now is this concept of lambdas. Now, a lambda expression is going to be a block of code where you can pass it around so you can execute it later. And lambdas are very good because they abstract a lot of away a lot of the kind of processes that we need to use to get some of these arrays dot sorting using the comparator interface done. So again, what we did last lecture is I made a new file here called string length comp alternative, and I went ahead and it tried to use a comparator again to achieve the same effect as the first one, but in inverse, right? So if I rerun our code here, we'll notice that it goes from the biggest to the smallest. Now, what a lambda expression can actually do for us is inside of our code, we can actually go ahead and create this type of function that's built in, and it will automatically output a result for us. So the piece of code that we're going to be using here is actually going to be written directly into the second parameter of our arrays.sort. Now, where are we getting this from? Well, again, what we did here is we created this big class called string comp alt. We made an object instance of it, and then we passed this object instance into our arrays.sort function. Do we need to do that each time we want to change that? No. What we could actually do here is I'm going to comment out the last one that we have here, and I'm going to say arrays.sort, and I want to sort people. But for my second part of my code, what I want to do is create a lambda expression. So what I could say here is create a lambda expression that takes in two parameters of string 1 and string 2, and it's going to return a block of code for me. Now, this block of code is going to be, I'll try to mimic it off of the I'll try to mimic it off of the parameters that we're given here. So I'm going to return the length of S2 minus the length of S1 that's here. And then I'm going to say return diff like so. And we'll see here that I have, let me change these to our length. And we'll see now that I actually have this kind of built-in function directly into my code. So it looks a little odd right now, but let's go ahead and try to run this one. And we'll notice that we're not actually getting any output just yet because we're just returning the diff right now. Let me try to actually print out our arrays after this. And we might need to update one more thing. Nope. So actually what we get here is because we're using this lambda expression that goes ahead and it takes in these parameters right here, and this little arrow is pointing to a block of code that will execute, we can essentially eliminate the need to create a new alternative class and just put in the code that we want to use for the comparator right there. So again, either one of these ways will work. And for another scenario here, if we have no parameters, then we can put in empty parentheses. So let's just say that our code might not work right now if I get rid of this. But let's just say that I want to do another sorting algorithm that only sorts by returning a positive value. So I'll go ahead and I'll put in my arrow like so. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to say return 1. Now we'll see here that my interface method compare might require two different parameters. Yes, so this one might not work for us if we don't provide the parameters. But let's just go ahead and try to sort by returning 1 the entire time. And let's print out this final one. And we'll see here that because it's returning 1, it's always returning a positive value. If I return a negative 1, you will see that we'll get the inverse where it goes from Rose, Jack, Dylan, Sophia, and Duchess. You'll notice here that Rose and Jack are kind of flipped in this scenario, but it's not that huge of a deal. They both are length 4. But again, this is a way to use your lambda expressions. So again, if I'm going to put these out of our code, right here. But these are really neat ways if you don't want to go ahead and create a new class of you can just go ahead and create a lambda expression. And again, the lambda expression signature needs to match what is expected. So because compare takes in two parameters, if you're using a lambda expression to replace the function, you need to provide two parameters as well. If you're using compare to, for instance, you can actually go ahead and just use one because that only takes in one. There's a file here called alt string compare that does the exact same thing. It does it a bit differently in one line as well. You can see here that I don't put brackets in here because it's a single line that does it. But again, it's a very similar way to do the lambda expressions, and it's a bit easier to do it besides having to make another class, reference that class with an object, and pass the object into the sorting algorithm.